No, yes, I'm definitely stalling because I don't want to talk about this. Because it's something that we learned and we've known for a long time, but like every single time something happens to minority groups in America, we tend to have this lesson reinforced. The first one here we have is from Axolotls with Cream. It said, your art is so good. Oh, really? I know you're trying to say art, but it's funny that you never corrected your mistype, especially since you're here in chat to be embarrassed by it. But also, Dumpy the Ditto, everybody. And Dumpy the Ditto with bloomers. Anyways, on to something less embarrassing. The next one we have here is from Mr. Stopheles. Said, I introduce you to Slimina Jar. Slimina Jar. Slimina Jar, also known as Suris and Drag. Bimbo Suris coming soon. Bimbo Suris is there. Because it was the direct next one. Jesus. Anyways. Thank you all for your fan art submissions. If you want your fan art to be shown in a future video, the best way to do so is to drop it into the fan art section of the Discord. With that said, let's go ahead and get ready to get into the actual topic at hand. I am going to be titling this video Some of Those Who Work Forces, because, well, it's true. So, we have two sources here for this. There's more sources than this, but we have two we're going to be looking at right now today. First one is going to be from the Anti-Defamation League. The other one is going to be from the Associated Press. But, so new analysis from the Anti-Defamation League Center on Extremism finds that leaked membership lists for the Oath Keepers, a right-wing anti-government extremist group, includes elected officials, law enforcement officers, and members of the military and first responders. In September 2021, we got on to them for not setting up their website in such a way that I'd be able to read everything on the entire page. Why is it all one column? I'm sorry, ADL. Please get your shit together. In September 2021, the nonprofit journalist collective Distributed Denial of Secrets released the membership database for the Oath Keepers organization. The membership data, which includes more than 38,000 names, provided unique insight into the people who signed up for the organization over the years, and helps illuminate the extent to which the group's anti-government ideology has permeated mainstream society. ADL's analysis uses the leaked data to highlight the number of individuals who signed up for or are supported by or supported the Oath Keepers in key areas: elected office, law enforcement, the military, and emergency services, as well as the general population. That gut, thank you for redeeming your points for an you fucking degen. I want to go ahead and pause real quick to note, can you imagine you're a first responder, you're like a fireman, right? And this skinhead looking motherfucker next to you is just like, hey, I'm gonna go do a thing later tonight. You wanna come with me? That'll be food. You wanna you got anything going on today? And you're like, well, I was going to make a whole bunch of children wish they were actually abortions in Fortnite, but instead, sure, I'll go with you to whatever thing you're doing, and then, of course, you find yourself in the middle of the Oath Keepers. That'd be weird as feck. But, let's go, said, wait, you got food? Hey, want some food and something else? Yeah, functionally. Fenakagami, thank you for redeeming your points for Hydrate. I said that's more or less how the clan recruited. Nothing new. Oh no, I'm aware. I'm aware. Like, believe Clipboard, for those who don't know, like, I live decently close. I mean, I'm in District 14, so everybody here lives decently close to Stone Mountain. Stone Mountain is where, like, we had the third reconvening, restructuring of the KKK, the third rebirth of that organization. I'm familiar enough. Continuing on, the Oath Keep... Jesus, I hate the way your website is set up. The Oath Keepers are a virulently anti-government, violent extremist group whose members have been arrested in connection with a wide range of criminal activities, including seditious conspiracy and other charges relating to the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol, and including various firearms violation, conspiracy to impede federal workers, possession of explosives, and threatening government officials, said the ADL CEO Jonathan Greenblatt. To know that members of this group have permeated key aspects of civil society should serve as a wake-up call to people of all political persuasions that extremists hell-bent on destroying our democratic norms are making inroads across the country. ADL today also unveiled an interactive map detailing the number of Oath Keepers from the membership database found in each state, broken down by category: law enforcement, military, elected official, first responder, etc. Let's take a look at that map before we go any further. Let's take a look at that map. So, the maximum number of Oath Keeper signups have been in Texas, of course, with the second most being in California, followed by Florida. Now, granted, these are states with high populations, so this is to be expected, but at the same time, one thing that's really weird to me is seeing the amount of them that are in New York. Like, on the one hand, I kind of get it, because New York, the main cities are bastions for liberalism, but when you go outside of that, from what I understand, things get a little more conservative. And there's also a lot of people who being around people of other races for too terribly long makes them really upset, I guess. Look how pale Georgia is. Most of that comes down to our population density. Like, okay, populations in Georgia are centered in Marietta, Atlanta, and Savannah. When you go outside of those population zones, it's mostly rural out here. Like, there's a lot of space just empty, not being used. So, like, we don't have densely populated hubs outside of those three, really. There's like 5 people in Georgia, and they all want Marjorie Taylor Greene in office. Like, I'm trying to think. The biggest sprawling cities we have here are equally mapped by our cities that barely exist on the map. Like, for every Marietta, there's a Ranger. And if you don't know where Ranger is, don't worry. Nobody in Ranger knows where the fuck it is either. Because nobody knows where that city limit begins. No one does. That said, let's see here. And then this is just more information on the map itself. I just want to take a glance at the map to see, like, what we found there. Total numbers: 8 elected officials in Texas. 33 law enforcement officers, 10 military, and 7 first responders. I'm fairly certain in California it's going to be fewer elected officials, right? Yeah, half the elected officials in California, with 24 law enforcement, 12 military, 9 first responders. Who wants to bet what we find with... So with New York, it's probably not going to be elected officials either. New York is probably going to be... okay, my bet is Florida's going to be mostly law enforcement and military. And New York is not... New York will have fewer than California in the elected officials area. Nope. New York has more. New York has 5 elected officials found in the Oath Keeper organization, 0 military, and 0 first responders. That's surprising. It's all law enforcement. Their Oath Keepers are all law enforcement for the most part. Now, military not being in New York makes sense to me because a lot of people in the military, they tend to go down south, right? Like, when you're in the military, you tend to find yourself down south, not after your tours of duty, not just because ideologically the South is going to be more what you find, like more people are recruited from the South anyway, but also the fact that the South is just considered a better place to retire. Let's be honest. Like, Florida is like the destination retirement place. Curious what the numbers are if they included former military and law enforcement. Let's see here. Let's look at Florida real quick. Florida, 1 elected official, 11 law enforcement, 6 military, 2 first responders. I thought that there was going to be a higher concentration for law enforcement in Florida. I'm not going to lie. Not even going to lie. The 1 elected official, it's just Ron DeSantis. It's just Ron DeSantis. No elected officials in Georgia. None of them. That is surprising. Between Marjorie and Kemp, I would have expected something. Interesting. That's interesting. Bet a half ton of Tennessee is? Yeah, 4 elected officials in Tennessee. Yep. Georgia surprises me. I'm actually kind of proud of this state for once. Let's continue on. Key findings. As of August 8th, the Center for Extremism has identified 373 individuals we believe are currently serving in law enforcement agencies across the country. This number is far higher than any previously identified number of extremists within law enforcement. For comparison, an ADL report released in 2021 identified 76 cases, 73 of which were unique, in which extremists were found serving in law enforcement. So this is a lot more than what was found before. That's an insane amount of people when you think about it. Because you have to think, for every one of those law enforcement agencies, if there's even one person from the Oath Keepers in that agency, that's one person who's going to try to recruit from within it. People in extremist organizations like this act a lot like a cancer. They get in and they start infecting all of the healthy cells around them. They come in and they start trying to get people who are in an organization to lean closer to their ideals. MTG just have friends with alternative views. Yeah. Alternative views on things like the Holocaust and 9/11. ADL identified individuals we believe are currently holding senior leadership positions within their respective agencies, including at least 10 chiefs of police and 11 sheriffs. That's probably some of the more dangerous ones. Like if you have a random beat cop who's just trying to get people in the break room to, you know, come to his clubhouse where they're going to play Super Smash Brothers or some shit, and it just happens to be, you know, one of their meetings, that's bad enough. But when it's actually a sheriff, when it's actually somebody who has a position of leadership, not leadership within a local community, but leadership within the actual organization itself. Fafa, oh, how's it going, Fafa? So to kind of think of it like that downer person at a part-time job, their constant talk about the job being terrible and how bad things are can really bring you down. Upright Left Down says, whenever I read MTG, I think Magic the Gathering. I do too. That's kind of the reason why I title the videos the way I do when I do that, especially after the MTG video. But also, for those who don't know, I'm going to do this real quick, a very quick shout out to Fofa. Fofamit is a fellow VTuber, and their shtick is actually producing tutorials on YouTube, how-tos on how to be a VTuber, how to do anything. If you have been wanting to be a VTuber, especially a 3D VTuber, and that's something that you've considered, Fofamit's channel is like a one-stop shop for everything you might want to know. Not even lying. You teach people how to become cringe. Fofa, the very first link on all of my videos is a link that says, own your cringe, also own mine, and it links to a Dakimakura. So, I mean, so what's Iowa look like on the Oathkeeper map? Let's take a look here. It's only 6, and it's all law enforcement. It's all law enforcement. Jeebus. I'm glad it's not elected officials, though. What is the ADL? The ADL is the Anti-Defamation League. They are one of the organizations, along with Right Wing Watch, whose entire job is to catalog, study, and document extremism in the United States and across the globe when they have the ability to, but it's almost always centered more around the U.S. Southern Poverty Law Center is another one of those, but they happen to stretch further out. If anybody is wondering where this map is concerned, if there's any state you have questions on, by all means, go ahead and go to the ADL resources map there. Said ADL started out tracking anti-Semitism specifically. See, that was a bit of information I didn't know. I wasn't aware that they had started out tracking anti-Semitism, though that doesn't surprise me, because typically, if you find a racist in the States, scratch a little bit and you'll find somebody who dabbles in that, which is gross and disgusting, but it also makes sense. Like, the KKK as an organization were very anti-Semitic on top of being, generally racist. So, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Said ADL's Center for Extremist Analysis identified 81 individuals across the country who are currently holding or running for public office in 2022. These individuals run the gamut from local office, mayors, towns, council members, school board members, to state representatives and senators. Prior to this year's primary season, the ADL confirmed 42 Oathkeeper-aligned individuals who were up for election for public office in 2022, consisting of 22 incumbents and 20 candidates. As of August 8th, 21 of these candidates have advanced to the general election either by winning their primary or having their primary canceled. Oh, that's like what happened with Marjorie Taylor Greene. She had her opponent in the primary, or was it her opponent in the general? Her opponent in the general election didn't end up being part of the conversation anymore. I don't know why it keeps wanting me to share these things. I don't know. So as for the Oathkeeper's Baphomet, Oathkeepers sound like something from a fantasy novel. You'd wish. Here, I'll go ahead and bring up a prompt on them from the Southern Poverty Law Center. The Oathkeeper organization is an organization that claims to defend the U.S. Constitution fighting tyranny, but as former Oathkeeper spokesman Jason Van Tattenhove describes, the group is actually selling the revolution. The threats to American liberties that Oathkeepers say the federal government is responsible for are in reality a set of baseless conspiracy theories. As part of the group's mission, Oathkeepers have directed their recruitment efforts towards members of the military, law enforcement, and other public safety positions. And they are often confrontational and have participated in multiple armed standoffs against the government. The most recent would be the insurrection of the United States Capitol on January 6, when members of the group, including its leader, Stuart Rhodes, were arrested and accused of conspiring to oppose the presidential transfer of power by force. So the TLDR with the Oathkeepers is they are for the most part, far right-wing extremist group in the United States that claims to defend democracy and the Constitution, but the tactics that they use are very anti-democratic. Like, the peaceful transfer of power is supposed to be one of the main things that you look for in any democratic system. That's like one of the things that shows what a republic or a democracy is all about. You can't be pro-democracy and be anti the peaceful transference of power. Sounds like some kind of IRL Handmaid's Tale kind of group. So, by and large, you start finding some of that in organizations like this. Most of your far right-wing extremist organizations do tend to have a lot of those hallmarks of, when you say a Handmaid's Tale, I'm imagining just like misogyny, power being exerted over women, stuff like that. Like, when I think of that, these organizations, they do tend to lean that way. Not all the time, though. But in a lot of cases, yes. There is sometimes correlation. I said all the Oathkeeper billboards I saw around Fort Hood were all about preventing the disarming of Americans. You know what's funny? If the Democrats are trying to take all of the guns in America, I wish they would hurry up and do it already, because I'm tired of hearing people bitch about it happening. The Democrats have been, quote, coming for our guns ever since I was a child in '92. At least that's been the boogeyman for the longest time. And I don't know. It feels very Boy Who Cried Wolf after a while, right? Where you're just like, is it really happening? Is it really going to? I don't see it happening. They've been gunning for it. Yeah, apparently so. Let's continue on with the article here. ADL identified 117 individuals who we believe currently serve in the United States military, an additional 11 who serve in the reserves, and 31 who hold civilian positions or are military contractors. In addition to those currently serving in the military, ADL estimates that 1 in 10 of the individuals in the database previously served in the military in some capacity. In addition, the ADL identified 86 who we believe are active firefighters, including several fire chiefs, as well as 19 active paramedics and 31 emergency technicians in the database. The Oath Keepers have used disaster relief to garner positive attention for their group, and these professionals have skills that can bolster those efforts. It should be noted, however, the Oath Keepers did not just draw supporters from the professions they explicitly targeted. Among the many professions held by list members are religious figures, teachers, civil engineers, and government employees. Some individuals reported holding top-secret clearance or had jobs that gave them access to critical infrastructure, such as nuclear facilities. We've read it all wrong. Maybe it's coming for our guns, not coming. Ah, yes, gives a new meaning to the term ammosexual. Said, you hope not, Chrissy. I would hope not too, but remember, we had Trump as president once. It makes sense that we would have extremists in noted positions in government. Notable examples. Arizona State Senator Wendy Rogers, a self-proclaimed member of the Oath Keepers, who has remained a supporter despite the group's participation in January 6th. In March 2021, just 2 months after the insurrection, Rogers met with the Cottonwood Oath Keepers and praised the group for their dedication to our Constitution and our country. Well, Wendy Rogers makes sense. We've covered Wendy on this channel before. I am surprised to not find Marjorie in this group. I am not surprised to find Wendy in this group. Like, that's just how my brain works. And before some of them are in the Geotus cult. I'm not familiar with Geotus. An individual who self-identified as a member of the Army wrote, "First and foremost, I believe the oath I took when I enlisted in the Army should always be held as a high standard. The Constitution supersedes all law enforcement and even the president. I can shoot a weapon and hit my target. I can help when the federal government tries to enact martial law on us citizens." The actual LARPing. You were in the military. We made you into a weapon. We pointed you at other people, and now you're just like, well, when the federal government tries to enact martial law, I'm gonna shoot. Well, I'm gonna be honest. The verbiage here makes me wonder who specifically he's trying to shoot. I don't know. One individual who listed an address on an Air Force base described himself as a vocal advocate of instilling among junior officers and NCOs their allegiance to the Constitution and the American people, not the government, especially the president. We are apolitical with a charge to defend inalienable rights. I mean, that's cute and all, but I'm fairly certain that the president is the commander-in-chief. I'm fairly certain that you answer directly to him. Like, This is one of those, like, yes, you should serve the American people more than you serve the president. Yes, that's a very cute ideal. Yes, I want to agree with you. In practice, no, he's literally your boss. Fafim says, I think it's a really good idea after this to look at the Moonies cult. The Moonies cult, the Unification Church from Korea, since surprisingly it had some overlap with the United States. They believe Jesus back in the day used an AR-15. I'm somewhat familiar with the Moonies. I'm mainly actually familiar with Stephen Hassan's work afterwards. Stephen Hassan was an ex-Moonie who ended up making what was called the BITE model, which was a model on how to identify extremist cults. I've used his work a lot when covering stuff like this on my channel.
Never look a tulip in the eye.
Mr. Crazy Villain, thank you very much for the follow. We're covering some crazy villains right now. Hopefully you don't know any of them. So Idaho State Representative Chad Christensen. Fafit says, oh, I think I'm getting an idea why the 5 days. The 5 days? The 5 days. I'm curious what that means. But Idaho State Representative Chad Christensen appears in the Oath Keepers database as having a Liberty Tree membership. His listings in the database is unsurprising, given that he named himself as an Oath Keeper in his official legislative bio. Christensen lost his primary race in 2022. And it goes on to list a whole bunch of other people that are in there. So we all know Jesus uses a nail gun. Oh. While the open source resources used by the ADL to identify individuals typically provide accurate information, there are some limitations to this methodology, particularly in verifying names within the database that match the names of law enforcement and military personnel. ADL has worked extensively to verify the individuals in question, and common names in high-density population areas were excluded from the final count. In addition, ADL is informing law enforcement agencies across the country that a person with a name matching one of their employees was found in the Oathkeeper database. Some agencies have been responsive, others did not respond or responded without confirmation. That guy says, sadly, people in the military tend to use the phrase unlawful order a lot when it comes to a president they don't like. So they use that loose interpretation as, I'll go ahead and join an extremist group because I don't like that dude. Jesus. Felicia Angel says these guys are giving military members a bad name. Just, yes, we swear an oath to the Constitution. It's against all enemies, sworn and domestic. That does not include the president, unless, yeah. I don't know, I'm aware. I'm from a military family. Like, everybody in my family, for the most part, is either Marine, Navy, or Air Force. To my knowledge, we don't have anybody in the Army. But, I want to look at the Associated Press look here, see if there's anything else that is pulled in this particular article. The names of hundreds of U.S. law enforcement. Why are you formatting your website this way? There we go. There we go. I don't need this. Go. Oh. Fine, whatever. The names of hundreds of U.S. law enforcement officials, elected officials, military members were leaked in here. People who were linked to January 6th. The ADL processed more than 38,000 names. It identified more than 80 people who were running for or served in public offices. The data raises fresh concerns about the presence of extremists in law enforcement and the military who are tasked with enforcing laws and protecting the United States. Said even for those who claim to have left the organization when it began to employ more aggressive tactics in 2014, it is important to remember that the Oath Keepers have espoused extremism since their founding, and this fact was not enough to deter these individuals from signing up. Appearing in the Oath Keepers database doesn't prove that a person was ever an active member or shares its ideology. Some people on the list contacted by the Associated Press said they were briefly members years ago and are no longer affiliated with the group. Some said they were never dues-paying members. Their views are far too extreme for me, said Sean Mobley, sheriff of the Ontario County, Colorado. He told the Associated Press in an email that he distanced himself from the Oath Keepers years ago over concerns of its involvement with a standoff against the federal government at Bundy Ranch in Bunkerville, Nevada, among other things. The Oath Keepers, founded in 2009 by Stuart Rhodes, is a loosely organized conspiracy theory-fueled group that recruits current and former military, police, and first responders. That's the stuff we already looked at when we looked at the Southern Poverty Law Center. We already know that bit there. So that's not anything new, per se. So more than 24 people associated with the Oath Keepers, including Rhodes, have been charged in connection with the January 6th attack. We already know that bit. They've grown quickly along with wider anti-government movements and used the tools of the internet to spread their message during Obama's presidency. Which doesn't surprise me, given that they escalated their stuff back in 2014. So the Oath Keepers have been so associated with Rhodes that the removal of the central figure had an outsized impact, and partly because many associated with the group were often those who wanted to be considered respectable in their communities. The image of being associated with January 6th was too much for many of these folks. Among the elected officials whose names appear in the membership list is South Dakota State Representative Phil Jensen, who won a June Republican primary in his bid for re-election. As Jensen told the Associated Press, he paid for a once-a-year membership in 2014, but never received any literature, attended any meetings, or renewed his membership. I'll believe that when I see it. I'll believe that when I see it. Jensen said he felt compelled to join because he believed in the oath we took to support the U.S. Constitution. He wouldn't say whether he now disavows the Oath Keepers, saying he doesn't have enough information about the group today. My guy! Information on the Oath Keepers is very publicly available. You have all the information you need to make that consideration. No! I'm gonna go ahead and call that one a cop-out. I'm going to go ahead and call that one a cop-out. I could be wrong here, but yeah, that feels like one of those I don't want to lose my election to my own party not supporting me type of things. ADL said it found the names of at least 10 people who now work as police chiefs and 11 sheriffs. We already know about that. I'm not a dues-paying member is what one of them said. Hollensheet, a Republican, said he was campaigning for sheriff several years ago when voters asked him if he was familiar with the Oath Keepers. He said he wanted to learn about the group and recalls paying for access to content on the website, but that was the extent of his involvement. Benjamin Boak, a police chief in Oskaloosa, Iowa, recalled getting emails from the group years ago and said he believes a friend may have signed him up, but he said he never paid to become a member and doesn't know anything about the group. Eric Williams, police chief in Idaho, Texas, said in an email that he hasn't been a member or had any interaction with the Oath Keepers in over 10 years. He called the storming of the Capitol terrible in every way. He said, I pray this country finds a way back to civility and peace in discourse with one another. Interesting. And that's as far as it goes there. So that gave us a little more insight on the individual people who have been noted in that with the ADL. So I think what it comes down to is we can't really make a determination on specific individuals where this is concerned. But what we can do is point out that this is still alarming. You have a far right-wing extremist organization known for resorting to violent tactics where people who are in our law enforcement and our elected representatives happen to be members in multiple variations of capacity. So all I can say is that's kind of scary. Is there anything to be done about it particularly? Well, unfortunately, outside of